We've been struggling with a lot of technology problems here, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Dudley Wigdahl. I'm the curator for mammals and birds at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening in from. And today the topic is we're talking about penguins. We're trying to catch you up. I think the last time I spoke with everybody was way back in February, and we were preparing to come out of our winter season and go into our breeding season. And as a sort of a catch up to our exhibit, it's called the June Keys Penguin Exhibit, where we feature Magellanic penguins. We've got 19, and if you want to, I guess we should say it's 20 since we had a chick this year. The exhibit itself is about it's a duplicate of an area of southern Chile, and the exhibit is about a little bit over 45 feet long. It's about 8 feet deep. It's about 12 to 15 feet wide, depending on which part of the exhibit you're looking from. It's saltwater, and it has about 15,000 gallons, and we keep the temperature at about 60 degrees, and we have what's called a dry resting area, or the land area that the penguins can go up on, and that's about 280 square feet. So that kind of catches you up on the exhibit itself. Like I said, we have 20 birds, and they range anywhere in age from several months in this new chick that we have to as old as, let's see, Henry looks like he's about 23 years old. 1993, 2003, yeah, about 23. Anyway, they vary. We have several birds that came in to us from the wild, a facility in Brazil that was rehabbing birds. We were lucky to get this new genetic material into our exhibit, and then we complemented those birds with birds from other facilities such as the San Francisco Zoo. So I think that catches you up, and I'm working with one of our techs here. I'm not seeing, like I normally do, I'm not seeing the questions on the screen, so I have to refer to the tech's telephone here. It says here, okay, so I'll start off. The first question is, the announcement that the new chick belongs to Roxy and Floyd was quite a surprise for those of us who saw the chick in Kate and Avery's burrow. Was the egg fostered? If so, what was the problem with Roxy and or Floyd, and that both of their eggs had to be fostered? So we have 4 breeding pairs of Magellanics. Patsy Noodles, Kate and Avery, Roxy and Floyd, and Whatever and Shim are the 4 breeding pairs. Of course, we'd love to see more of that. As the youngsters get older, we'd love to see Robbie get paired up with one of those youngsters, as well as Newsom and Ludwig. But anyway, so we try to be proactive, and we'll start early on, and we'll paint different scenarios. You know, what if every single pair laid 2 eggs, as they're all capable of doing, and then we come up with a game plan on that scenario, and then we back off. And what if only 3 pairs, or 2 pairs, or 1 pair? You know, what happens if this pair doesn't lay eggs, or they're infertile, or whatever? So we try to go through all the scenarios and figure out what's best for our birds. One initial scenario was to go ahead and hand raise some birds on our own should they struggle with the care of their oon. So one of the common things that's done, if you have one pair that's a better parents than the other that may have had successful eggs, is you can have surrogate parents, or you can foster the eggs to another pair. They're quite amenable to having the eggs moved over, as long as they're caring for something. And something else that comes into play as we discuss this particular question is what's the history of our birds? Who's been successful, who's had struggles, what comes up during that time period. And one thing that we found that Roxy and Floyd over the years, excuse me, is that Roxy's had some struggles health-wise post-chick care, and so one of our scenarios was to go ahead and maybe take some of that stress off of her and go ahead and just let one of our other pairs raise the youngster and maybe do just as well, as good a job, but then allow Roxy to not go through the stress of raising the chick. So that's what we decided to do in the case of Roxy and Floyd's chick. We took the egg and we let Kate and Avery raise it. So there might have been some confusion as you were watching the camera screen on a day-to-day basis, and all of a sudden you see Kate and Avery raising a chick. So that's the case. And so far, the chick is doing very well, and she's at about let's see here, how old is this chick? The chick is about 50 some days old. So is this there next? Also, let me catch you up on the chick. We don't know the sex of the chick. It was hatched on the 5th of June. And it weighed 77 grams. The egg weighed, or the chick weighed 77 grams at that time period. And so they grow very, very fast. And the chick now weighs a little over 3,000 grams after 50-some days of age. We decided, and we do this normally, we decided to go ahead and remove the chick from the parents at about age 25 days. They can see very well after 7, and they start getting curious and they want to start meandering around the exhibit. So we play it conservative. We go ahead and we don't. Let's back up and tell you an example in the wild. The nesting holes or dens are well spaced apart. The distance between the nesting dens and the water is quite a distance, and as well as the protective ranges of the other penguins. But in our exhibit, we're a much smaller example of what you might see in the wild. The distance to the water is very close. The next den is right next door, and the other pairs are right there as well. So we like to play it conservative. We go ahead and when we see the chick starting to wander, we go ahead and pull the chick and we hand raise it from there. And that helps us too as well. It gives us a little safety net on the growth of the bird. It allows us to start weighing it more frequently. It allows us to teach it how to hand feed, because that's the way it's going to get its food the rest of its life anyway. And it gets the bird used to being handled by the keepers, and so there's a lot of benefits to us as caregivers for the penguin. So I hope that answers that question as well as possible. Question number 2 here is: we see both Floyd and Shim place nesting material on top of the female when she was on the egg. Is this typical behavior for the males, and if so, why do they do that? I don't. I think it was probably an aberration that this occurred. It is typical that, it's very typical, of course, that the penguins will bring nesting material to the den. And as far as sticking it on top of them, I think this, maybe they're not the neatest birds in the world, and they just place it on top of the bird that's sitting on the nest, and she'll rearrange it, or he will rearrange it. They both share time on the nest. They both share time in raising the chick. So I don't think that, I think it's just something that happens. I don't think it's particularly notable or something that's done purposefully. Question number 3 is: why does an adult put his or her beak on an egg as if checking for something? We saw Whatever do this several times. Well, Whatever is one of our females. She hasn't had a lot of success in the past. In fact, we've had no success with her over the years. She's one of the ones that we would talk about probably taking, if we had eggs that were fertile, probably taking them to another pair to raise. But anyway, whatever, you may have seen whatever get down and stick her beak close to the egg. There may be several reasons for this, one of which, of course, would be to go ahead and rotate the egg. The egg has to have it has to reach a temperature of about at least 95.5 degrees, and it has to be a gradient over the egg. So it requires rotating the egg so that the temperature gradient remains the same and the growth of the chick is consistent with that. Another reason that they might go ahead and get down close to the egg is it's pretty well documented that there is communication between the near-term embryo and the parents. They can hear the youngster inside the egg moving around. You can hear some vocalizations from the chick. So there might be early bonding between the chick and the parents at that time. So we see this a lot. So I believe there's probably two good reasons why you might see the parent down close to the egg like that. Might be looking for damage as well. There might be a poor odor or something that says might be time to abandon the egg. Let's see. You said during the live chat on August 8th, 2013, boy, someone's paying attention. You said during the live chat on August 8th, 2013, that Anderson was fostered by Floyd and Roxy. Who are his biological parents? Oh, I've got a little cheat sheet with me, and I can look that up pretty quick. Anderson, no, if I said that, I was wrong. Roxy and Floyd are Anderson's parents. So, yeah, those are his biological parents. So if I said that back in August of 2013, then I was incorrect when I said that. Is there an understanding of why a number of eggs were not viable this season? No, there isn't. It's not uncommon in fact, it's just a part of nature that some years you'll have all the planets align and everything works out. Everybody lays two viable eggs. Everybody goes to the 40-day incubation period and raises all their youngsters. But there's so many things that can happen. The eggs aren't fertile. That's what we saw with whatever and Shim. So those eggs didn't come to fruition. They can be a little sloppy in their exit and entry into the den, which we've seen before, and we had several cracked eggs. Once you crack an egg, it's pretty much doomed. You're going to lose the embryo due to innervation of bacteria or virus or fungus. We saw a couple of eggs get rolled out of the nest for whatever reason. The birds know, but on our part, it's just speculation what has occurred. So we also had a couple of the embryos not make it to the 40 to 43 day incubation period. So they had what is called a DIS, or a died-in shell situation. So this year was a poor year overall. We had one successful chick, and everybody else didn't do so well. But we've had some good years, and we've had some down years, and we've had some mediocre years, and that's just the way it goes. It's going to be that way. We're going to see ups and downs as the birds go through their history. Hopefully they improve with their parental care over time due to experience. But time will tell, history will tell, and and we certainly would love to see whatever and Shim improve on their parental skills. It says, why do the keepers separate young penguins who are beaking each other? Is that considered a normal behavior? Beaking, or you'll see them approaching each other, and they'll be slapping the beaks back and forth. You see it. It can be interpreted two ways. One as an aggressive behavior. The other is a pairing up type behavior. But the keepers are pretty well up to speed on recognizing whether or not this is an aggression move or preparing for a nesting move. More often than not, it's aggression. And since we're there, there's no reason why we can't go ahead and interfere with that and break up whatever stress may be causing this. Once you break it up, they usually go their way. One goes to the water, or they go to another side of the exhibit, or whatever. Again, it's our duty as their caregivers to go ahead and do the best we can for the particular for the penguins, and they have a limited space, and so it's not totally like a wild situation. So there's no problem. I have no problem with them going ahead and breaking up a potentially aggressive behavior. Why do penguins attack each other? We've seen other penguins on the beach attack Elvis when he has a seizure. What causes the behavior? Well, let me back up a little bit. For those of you that are not familiar with all our birds, we trade with other facilities for birds that meet our genetics needs better. Elvis was recommended to us from the SSP coordinator, or the species species survival program person that watches all the genetics of all the penguins that are in all the collections across the United States, and they make recommendations as to who's going to come here and who shouldn't be moved out, and hopefully the point is that you're improving your genetics of your situation. So Elvis came to us on a trade with another zoological institution, but one of the things that was not noted was that Elvis has a health problem. What looks like he suffers from seizures. So our expectation is that more than likely Elvis will not be a breeder for our exhibit, and we'll just hang on to him throughout his life, and we'll have to give him special attention. One thing that you'll see in nature is that the weak get worked over, preyed upon, depending on how you put it. When Elvis would exhibit a seizure, he would get picked on by other birds. You'd see an aggressive activity with him, and so we have to watch out for that. And so more often than not, Elvis is in our back area being cared for, and I think that happens in the wild with any particular species, and it's not particularly new or different from any particular species. If they show a weakness, for whatever reason, the population may aggress on that particular animal. It may be a way of utilizing the term "the strong will survive," keeping the genetics of the population as strong as possible. Do chicks in the nursery ever go back to the parents? Well, of course they do. After about 60 days or so, after the bird has fledged, and fledging, the term fledging just means that the downy feathers are replaced by subadult feathers, and they're now waterproof. They can swim without getting too cold or hypothermic, and then once we feel confident that the bird is eating on its own, has a good appetite, and is fully feathered, then the bird will do a full physical on that particular bird. We'll try and get the sex by sending the blood sample out, and we'll have already started the process of introducing the bird to other penguins. You may see a bird leave the exhibit, and we'll put it in with the chick to so that everybody slowly gets introduced to the chick, and the chick is not just sent out on his own to fare for himself. So there's a bit of an overlap there, and then like I said, at about 60 days, the chick is taken out to the exhibit, and everybody's kind of had already an introduction to the chick, and nobody's really surprised to see a new bird on exhibit. So yeah, the parents have an opportunity to go ahead and see their chick again, but more often than not, they don't. There's very little recognition that this is their chick, or at least they don't show it. If that was the case, I think you'd see the chick running up to the parents just by habit and soliciting for food, and we haven't seen that. So once the parents leave the chicks are on their own. It's a tough life. So let's see here. How is Elvis, and when is he expected to return to the exhibit? Well, Elvis is Elvis is our bird that, let's see, Elvis came to us. He was hatched way back in 2000, so that makes him about 15 years old. He's had a medical history with us. He experiences seizures. We don't know exactly why he gets those seizures, but he's on medication. So it's important that he gets his medication throughout the day. And so, due to the special attention that is required of him, it's seldom that he's out on exhibit. When he gets stabilized, you may see him out there. When he's having his situations or his seizures or whatever, he's brought to the back, and so more often than not, he's been in the back. The other thing that he is right now is he's right next door to the chick, so it gives him somebody that won't be aggressive to him, and it allows the chick to bond with another bird. So you may see Elvis come back on and go back off periodically. The regular penguin exhibit watchers have noticed that the feeding times seem to vary. Is this a purposeful decision by keepers in order to provide enrichment, variety to the penguins, or is it just that the keeper schedules vary a bit daily? And that's exactly what it is. You know, we try to keep it pretty steady. You know, 3 feedings a day, sometimes only 2, depending on what the feeding behavior is at the time. An example would be just before they go into molt. They'll be fed 3 times a day, and they'll eat a lot, and so they're trying to bulk up and prepare for the molt, which they do 1 time a year. And then other times during molt, you don't need to even try them 3 times a day. You might even try them once a day, because they've pretty much stopped eating, which is normal in the wild because they can't go out and feed for themselves anyway. So this is more of a natural behavior, natural instinctual thing to do, and that's shut down on their eating. So anyway, they're supposed to go out they have a range of times to go out, and it's really up to them depending on the workload. But you'll see an AM, a mid-afternoon, and then an evening feed, and it varies from anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes on either side. So it's pretty routine. I know you chart what each penguin eats. What do you do if you notice they aren't eating as much? How much does Shim weigh? Well, I've got Shim's weight right here, so I was prepared for that one. Shim's not our heaviest bird, but he's pretty close to it. He's 6.1 kilograms. So you can work out the math. It's 2.2 pounds per kilogram. And so there you go. I answered that one pretty quick. what do we do if we notice they're not eating as much? Well, again, we have to take the natural biological um, history of the animal. We look back on that. We look and see if we're in their winter season, and if we're in their chick raising season, if they're in molt, uh, what they ate the day before, how many, how long has it been between feedings? That's all part of the keeper's jobs, and they do a really good job of noticing behavioral changes. Let's say it's just a routine time period of the year where they're eating 3 times a day, a couple, 2 or 3 fish each feeding, and all of a sudden they stop. Well, communication amongst our keepers and our veterinarian is very important because we do look for trends. We want to make sure that we catch something before it gets to a point where it's not treatable. And so consistency amongst our staff is really tantamount to a good health with our birds. So if the bird doesn't eat the first time, well, that is passed on. We keep good records, which we look at. We also chart the weights of the animals. We look for trends. And if the bird doesn't eat again, we'll follow the behavior of the animal, keep a close eye. Again, the veterinarian is kept up to speed with it. If it doesn't eat again, more than likely we'll recommend that the veterinarian comes in and does a physical on the bird and takes the blood sample so we can see if we have an increased white blood cell count, or maybe we've got a dehydration situation for whatever reason. Maybe we've got a viral thing going on, which we don't necessarily treat with medication, but we keep a close eye on and keep the hydration level up. So it's all about communication between our staff, myself, and our veterinarian, so we can stay ahead of any problem that we have. So that's all 11 questions. So I know there's a lot of you that love to check in with us on a day-to-day basis and keep track of the birds, and you enjoy watching what you're seeing, and Explore.org does a wonderful job of putting up all these interesting animals that are out there for you to watch. Penguins, there's a lot of other different species that I go to and like to watch as well. So what's the future? Let's just take a few minutes and I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on with the exhibit. We're at 20 birds now. We expect to see the chick coming out here on the exhibit mid-August. The chick is about almost 2/3 through its fledging. So it still has the downy feathers on his back, and his subadult plumage on his chest, and so they weigh it on a day-to-day basis and feed it, of course, throughout the day, and it's in with Elvis. And so, like I said, we haven't named the chick yet. There'll be a name, an opportunity for people to have a Name the Penguin contest. You may go to our website and kind of follow that and see what's going on with that. We don't know the sex of the bird yet. We expect, like I said, as soon as the bird fledges, we'll take a physical. We'll send that blood out and we'll determine the sex. Of course, everybody's got their feelings as to what they think it is. It's very difficult to tell for the layman to just look at a penguin and say what sex it is. There's really very few distinguishing features between a male and a female, and some of these features overlap. A large female may look like a male. So the weights can overlap, as well as the size of the bill can be a determining factor on a male and female. Slightly taller birds, slightly heavier birds, maybe males, but like I said, they all overlap. So you can make a guess, but chances are you may get it wrong. So we like to cover ourselves and make sure that we know exactly what sex we have. Like I said, we have 4 breeding pairs. We haven't had a lot of success with whatever and shim, but we hope to in the future. And what we'd really love to see is, well, we're going to see Skipper and Jade and Paddles and Matson, they're going to come into their adult plumage this year. In fact, you're probably going to see, I think it's Jade going through. You'll see a lot of feathers on the deck right now if your camera's that good. You'll see that she's currently started her molt already, and Paddles and Matson and Skipper will soon follow. And then both Anderson and Heidi are coming into they were hatched in 2013, so this will be their second year. So our hope is that Heidi will pair up next year with one of our bachelor males. We still have one bird that is very prominent and very important to our genetics, and that is Robbie. Robbie is a wild caught animal from 2010, along with Roxy and Kate and Avery. So getting Robbie paired up with one of those youngsters from 2013 would be wonderful. Although maybe it'd be really cool if he'd wait for Jade, because Jade has got wild genes, totally wild genes on her side. So, but it is what it is. You know, we can't control who loves who in this group. But so we're at 20 birds. We'll wait and see what the SSP has to say. If you remember the Species Survival Program, on recommendations on whether we should transfer birds out or back in, and we'll try to do our best to keep everybody up to speed on what's going on in the exhibit, both on top of the water and underwater. And one of my keepers wanted to have me pass on to you that she's not a redhead, she's actually a blonde. So I hope that helps. And for those of you that have just checked in with us, please join us again when we do our next little talk or encounter here on explore.org. I really enjoyed talking to all of you, and your questions are all very in-depth and very enlightening, I think, for everybody as I try to go through the history of our collection. So until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks.